All right, so the one of them I started yesterday. That one was extremely confusing. The problem itself, and that's why I started it in the notes. We did half of it. So most of that I already did in the notes. That one was, I don't know why I have so many worksheets up here. What was the context of that one? The what? The radio station one. Okay. I don't know where I put it. Why do I have these in the same places? Okay, so where did we get to? Let me just start with the other one and then go backwards from there. It's easier to do it that way. So I'm going to start with number 2. There's one thing that could have almost been confusing about this, and some of you are confusing yourselves on things that should be extremely, extremely, extremely obvious. And so I want you to be able to understand how obvious it should be, or where you should figure out what kind of problem it is. So the first one, let's say I have absolutely no idea what's going on, but I'm just reading this one. Local radio station plays the different 40 rock songs. Program director at the station needs to know the total amount of time. Distribution of length of rock and roll songs in minutes is roughly symmetric with mean length of 3.9, standard deviation of 1.1. I should have absolutely no issues if that is a mean or proportion problem. Why? It literally says the word mean. Does it ever say anything about the word proportion? No. So that part, I expect some of you to be confused right now, like having trouble trying to figure it out, but I'm trying to make it obvious how much you should not have that issue. It's like y'all are trying to think too hard about like in the context and in depth and could I turn this into a proportion? No, if it gives you a mean, you're using means. If it gives you a proportion, use proportions. So the second problem, I'm giving you the fact that we have 70 students, 20 of them did record at least one, and you're trying to overthink that. Well, the very beginning of it starts with the proportion of students at man. We're talking about proportions. Make it easy. So you need to look at wording if you're having any issues with what kind of problem it is, because that should not be an issue at all. The other thing is, like if I'm talking about the do section, if I write down things that I need, so if it's proportion problem in do, the things that I would write, I would have in, I would also have what else? When I get to a problem that's dealing with means, what would I be writing there? So if you ever see a problem that has standard deviation, it's not a proportion problem. That's another big obvious thing there. So here, it gives us a standard deviation of 1.1. That's a mean problem. This problem never gives us anything about standard deviation. It's not a proportion, or it's not a mean problem. So make it easier on yourself about the difference between the two. I always have people initially having issues with that, but you should not, and I want to make that obvious. All right, so now that we understand the difference in which type of problem it should be, number 2, I'm probably going to talk through this and not write it out. I have it written out, so I might post a picture of it eventually. Your population is what? Who? All students at man. And I put like in parentheses like during February 1st through 5th because that would have been a good thing to mention, even though technically not mentioning that is kind of okay. Our sample would be what? The 70 randomly selected students. Again, I would probably put something about for the week of February 1st through 5th. My written answer key, I put that in parentheses for both of them. I wouldn't cut off if you didn't on this one though. So when you're defining P, here you should specifically mention the February 1st through 5th. So P is the proportion of man students who have at least one absence during the week of February 1st through 5th. If you didn't mention man students because you mentioned it before, that part would be fine. But you do have to mention proportion, at least one absence, and during that week. And then we're trying to find P parentheses what? Is so again, don't have issues with this problem.
20%.
How likely is it that our sample had a rate that high? Have what? 20 out of 70. I worded this problem, and I realized I was going to mess people up with that, but I wanted to see how y'all did with that. And some people are going to change that into a decimal, that's fine. All right, so our 10% condition, capital N is greater than or equal to 10N, our N is 70. So capital N is greater than or equal to 700, and the wording we would write beside of it is there are at least how many what?
There are at least 700 students at MAN.
At least 700 students at MAN. Normal condition, what are we checking?
Doesn't have it stated in the problem, but since N is greater than 30.
But we're talking about
Oh, for this one, it's going to be NP.
proportions is, yes, sorry. So N times P is greater than or equal to 10, N times 1 minus P is greater than or equal to 10. So 70 times 0.2, 70 times 0.8, and you get 14 and 56. So there are at least 10 students at MAN who do have at least 10 or at least one absence and do not have at least one absence during the week of February 1st through 5th. So we can use a normal approximation. And I know I'm talking through this right now, but I have it written out with some color stuff matching up, so I will post this eventually. So then our do section, our N is 70, our P is 0.2. So mu of P hat equals P, which is 0.2. Sigma of P hat ends up giving you 0.0478. And you should write beside that because 10% condition. And that ends up giving you a z-score of 1.79. 1.79 has an area of 0.9633, but we're shading to the right. So we do 1 minus, and your final area ends up being 0.0367. And then your conclude should be, if we were to randomly select 70 MAN students when P equals 0.2, then the probability of getting an absent rate of 20 out of 70 or higher is 0.0367. Yes.
Why is it greater than or equal to?
That was my wording that didn't look right. So like if you missed that part, the way that I worded it, I get why you worded it, like did that direction the wrong way. Had I done it for a test, like I was doing it really quick because it had been so long and I wanted to make sure I got it out there as quick as I could. And I looked at it later and realized that it didn't look right, but if I switched it at that point, I'd have to do one way and have to do the other way. So if you did it the other direction, I totally understand my wording. All right, I might just stop here with the homework as far as going over it right now because there's other stuff that I really want to do. Get out a sheet of notebook paper.